What do you think? Mont Ventoux or Alpe d'Huez? Both inspire fear in the Tour de France peloton and attract hundreds of thousands of fans. The Tour de France's most famous climbs are the Alpe d'Huez and Mont Ventoux. Each climb presents its own set of challenges. Ventoux is steep, long and exposed to the elements, whereas Alpe d'Huez is sinuous, twisting and densely packed with fans. So which is more difficult? Let's find out. Hey there viewers, today we've scheduled an epic battle between two legendary mountains in the Tour de France. Once again, welcome back to Cycling Right Now. We'll tell you everything about the Tour de France's two most famous climbs. So stick with the video and watch it till the end to know about it. Let's start with the epic Mont Ventoux. This climb is located in the Provence region in the south of France. Over the past 70 years, the Tour de France has been sparing in its visits to Mont Ventoux, which has undoubtedly contributed to the bold mountain's mystique. It is a 20.8 kilometer long ascent and bridges 1594 vertical meters with an average gradient of 7.7%. Mont Ventoux first appeared on the route in 1951 and the race returned only 12 months later, but the organization has always preferred to wait at least 3 years before returning to the mountain. Other titans such as the Galibier and Tourmalet are near perennials and are almost taken for granted. Because of its rarity, climbing Mont Ventoux always feels like a special occasion. Nevertheless, the Tour's first two visits were overshadowed in history by events in other races. Hugo Coblet's remarkable solo exploit on the road to Agen and Abdelkader Zaf's dramatic abandon en route to Nîmes are remembered more than the Tour's first ascent of Mont Ventoux via the gentler Malocéan approach. The stage was won by Louison Bobet and Lucien Lazarides was first to the top. 12 months later, Jean Robic led over the top from the tougher Bedouin approach on his way to stage victory in Avignon, but that achievement was merely a footnote in what was in many ways the first modern tour. For the first time, mountaintop finishes were included and an unbeatable Fausto Coppi won all three summits, winning the Alpe d'Huez, Sestriere and Puy de Dôme. When the Tour de France returned to the Mont Ventoux a couple of years later, cycling's failure to heed the warnings of the Jean Maléhac incident would have tragic consequences. In the intervening years, Mont Ventoux served as a summit finish twice, once in a time trial won by Charlie Gaulle in 1958 and once in a road stage won by Raymond Poulidor in 1965. But nothing marked the Tour's relationship with the mountain more than Tom Simpson's death on its slopes in 1967. When Simpson collapsed for the first time 2 kilometers from the summit, he was dropped from the group of leaders, but he ignored mechanic Harry Holt's pleas to stop. Simpson remounted and rode for another 200 meters before coming to a halt, held by a group of spectators. By the time he was airlifted off the mountain, Simpson was already dead. Tubes of amphetamine were found in his jersey pockets. In the aftermath of Simpson's death, fact and fiction became mixed up, as they often do on Mont Ventoux. His final words, according to legend, were the romantic "put me back on my bike." Simpson's final words, according to Hall, was simpler but no less sobering on. A young Gianni Mura, writing for La Gazzetta dello Sport, offered a restrained but moving account of the tragedy. It's awful to die in silence, without a breath, your eyes open without seeing. Simpson's death brought to light the issue of doping in cycling, and drug testing was implemented at the Tour de France the following year, but it would be a long time before anyone was willing to see clearly. By the time the Tour returned in 1970, Eddy Merckx's solo to victory at the summit, a monument to Simpson, had been erected. The Belgian had been the sole continental professional to attend Simpson's funeral in Haworth 3 years before, and as he rode past the memorial, he noticed Tour director Jacques Cordet laying a wreath in tribute. The epic battle between Marco Pantani and Lance Armstrong on the 2000 Tour de France was possibly the most well-known race on its slopes. The combatants may have been doped to the eyeballs with EPO, but it remains one of the all-time great mano-a-mano bike duels. 17 years later, one is revered after losing his life, while the other is disgraced after being exposed as a drug cheat. Both were Tour de France champions at the time, with Pantani winning the 1998 and Armstrong winning 1999. In the 2000 Tour de France, the pirate broke away from the leaders on the lower slopes of Ventoux in a trademark slashing and ferocious attack. Armstrong trailed, then caught up to the diminutive Italian, and they spent the rest of the ascent attacking while also matching each other pedal stroke for pedal stroke. the bold Pantani won the stage on the bold mountain as they approached the summit. Armstrong later downplayed the epic battle that had preceded the victory, claiming that he gave Pantani the stage so that the fight for the yellow jersey would not be affected. Then, in typical crassness, he referred to him as Elefantino, referring to his protruding ears, a nickname Pantani despised. There is still so much to say about Mont Ventoux, but we'll cover that in another video. Now let's move on to the other mountain with legendary status, the Alpe d'Huez. The Alpe d'Huez is a mountain in the Western Alps that towers over the small town of Le Bourg des Oisans, which is about 60 kilometers from Grenoble. The site has been occupied since the Middle Ages, but it rose to prominence in the 1930s when it became one of France's first major ski resorts. The Tour's first mountaintop finish has always lived up to its reputation as the most iconic in the race's history. It's a 13.8 kilometers long ascent and bridges 1,118 vertical meters with an average gradient of 8.1%, but it reaches 13% in the most treacherous sections. The Alpe d'Huez is by far the most famous of the many mountains that have featured in the Tour de France over the years, despite not being the steepest or the longest climb in any Tour de France. Alpe d'Huez embodies the Tour de France's passion, from the thousands of fans who line in slopes to cheer on their heroes to the 21 numbered switchbacks, each labelled with the names of previous winners. In 1952, the legendary Italian Fausto Coppi was the first to conquer the mountain during the Tour de France. It took nearly a quarter century before it appeared again in 1976, but it became a near-permanent fixture, appearing in all but 5 Tour editions until the end of the century. 6 of the first 9 Tour de France stages were won by Dutch riders, earning Alpe d'Huez the nickname the Dutch Mountain. Although no Dutch climber has won there since 1989, switchback number 7 remains Dutch Corner, crammed with exuberant orange-clad cycling fans whenever the Tour is in town. The late tragic Italian climber Marco Pantani set 3 records for the fastest ascent of the mountain's 13.8 kilometers, with his fastest time being around 36 minutes and 50 seconds. This is completely insane. No one has beaten that time since. However, almost all of the top times were achieved during the 1990s, when the sport was plagued by doping scandals that ruined the careers of Pantani and his rivals Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong. A victory on the summit of Alpe d'Huez during the Tour de France is enough to place a cyclist's name among the sport's greats. Dutch climbers Joop Zoetemelk, Henny Kuiper and Peter Winnen have won there twice, as have Italians Gianni Bugno and Marco Pantani. Lance Armstrong has been stripped of his 2 wins. In 1999, Giuseppe Guerini was comfortably leading the Alpe d'Huez stage and was only a few hundred meters from the finish line when he collided with a spectator who had stepped into the path to take a photo. Unfazed, Guerini got back on his bike and finished 21 seconds ahead of second place Pavel Tomkov in one of the Tour de France's strangest moments. And now we'll jump ahead to the year 2013. For the first time, stage 18 of the 2013 Tour de France, the race's 100th edition, included a double ascent of the Alpe d'Huez climb. Riders reached 1,765 meters in the first pass, then climbed the Col de Sérène in between, before continuing to the traditional finish on the second pass in what proved to be an especially difficult stage. In 2013, Christophe Riblon won the stage by more than a minute after chasing down Tejay van Garderen on the second ascent. The stage has been won by a Brit on the last 2 occasions the race was visited, with Geraint Thomas in 2022 and Tom Pidcock in 2018, representing Wales and England respectively. So here we're done with this video. This was all about the most epic climbs in the Tour de France. Let us know in the comment box which your favorite mountain is, the epic bold Mont Ventoux or the legendary Dutch mountain Alpe d'Huez. Like it and share it with your friends so that they get to know about these amazing places. Also subscribe to our channel to watch more amazing videos like this and hit the bell icon to get a notification of our latest videos. Thanks for watching.